Picture this. You're standing in Europe around 50 BC. There's no France, no Eiffel Tower, no baguettes, no existential cinema. Just forests, mud, and a group of mustached warriors yelling in a language that sounds like someone fighting a goat. Then Rome shows up, and everything changes. This is a story of how a patch of land went from tribal chaos to Roman province, to medieval bloodbath, to absolute monarchy, to chopping off its own king, to conquering Europe, to losing Europe, to inventing modern politics. And yes, they riot the entire time. Subscribe, because France doesn't do quiet. Before France was France, it was Gaul, Celtic tribes. No central government, no unified identity, just clans with impressive mustaches and very strong opinions. Then Julius Caesar shows up in 58 BC. He doesn't just invade, he writes about invading, which is the ancient Roman equivalent of live tweeting your conquest. By 51 BC, Gaul is Roman. Roads, baths, wine, Latin. The locals adapt. Slowly. Because nothing says cultural exchange like legions. Rome collapses in the 5th century, which in Europe basically means, all right, everyone, good luck. Enter the Franks, a Germanic tribe with ambition. Their king, Clovis, converts to Christianity around 496. This is important, because suddenly the church and the throne are on the same team, which is medieval Europe's version of getting verified. The word France comes from them. The land becomes Francia. It's not smooth, it's not stable, but it's forming. Then comes Charlemagne, crowned emperor in 800 AD. He expands aggressively. West, east, south. If there was land, he wanted it. He builds what looks suspiciously like a reboot of the Roman Empire. But Wade dies. His grandson split like siblings fighting over inheritance. France becomes West Francia. Germany becomes East Francia. Europe begins its lifelong hobby of borders. Fast forward. Feudalism. Knights. Castles. Peasants farming because someone has to. French kings slowly consolidate power. Not by being nice. By winning. Or outlasting. Or marrying strategically. Then comes the 100 Years' War, which lasts 116 years. Because medieval branding was loose. England and France fight over French throne. Joan of Arc shows up. Teenager. Armor. Vision from God. Walks into a war like she has a group project due. France eventually wins. England retreats. National identity hardens. The Black Death hits in the 14th century. Kills roughly a third of the population. Labor becomes valuable overnight. Feudalism starts cracking. When half your workforce disappears, hierarchy gets flexible. Then religious wars explode in the 1500s. Catholics versus Protestants. Massacres. Civil conflict. Eventually Henry IV says, essentially, everyone calm down. Issues the Edict of Nantes. Temporary peace. Then Louis XIV. For years old when he becomes king. Which means France is technically run by a toddler. Nobles immediately start testing the limits. Civil wars break out. It's called the Fronde. Translation: the aristocracy reminding the crown that they own castles and private armies. Louis grows up watching this. He learns one thing: never let powerful men get bored in their own provinces. So when he takes full control in 1661, he doesn't just rule. He redesigns power. First move? Versailles. Not just a palace. A golden cage. He drags the nobility out of their regional strongholds and plants them inside a glittering maze of mirrors, fountains, and endless ceremony. If you want influence, you live near the king. If you live near the king, you follow rules. And the rules are absurd. Who gets to hand him his shirt in the morning? That's political currency. Who stands closest while he eats? That's social elevation. He turns court life into competitive theater. Instead of plotting rebellion, nobles are competing over who gets to hold the royal candle. It's genius. Hard to organize an uprising when you're practicing how about properly. Meanwhile, real power shifts. Louis appoints intendants, royal officials who answer directly to him. Taxes, law, administration, centralized. No more semi-independent nobles running mini-kingdoms. France becomes a machine, efficient, controlled, directed from the center. And the center is him. He calls himself the Sun King, because everything revolves around him. It's not subtle branding. It's solar system-level ego. France under Louis XIV becomes Europe's heavyweight, largest population, largest army, best-dressed court. French language becomes a language of diplomacy. If Europe had a group chat in the 1600s, it would be in French. But dominance eats money. Louis fights the Dutch, fights Spain, fights the Holy Roman Empire, fights basically anyone who looks sideways at a border. War after war after war. Each one requiring soldiers, cannons, ships, uniforms, gunpowder, logistics. Armies don't run on vibes. They run on taxes. And taxes hit peasants hardest. Meanwhile, Versailles expands. Hall of mirrors. Gardens stretching like someone landscape infinity. Fountains choreographed like hydraulic ballet. Silk curtains imported. Marble hauled. Art commissioned. Fireworks displays large enough to intimidate the moon. This isn't decoration. It's projection. Every chandelier says, France is untouchable. But behind the gold leaf, the treasury starts wheezing. By the time Louis dies in 1715, France is powerful, respected, feared, and deeply in debt. He leaves behind a centralized state, a cultural superpower, a professional army, and a financial time bomb ticking quietly under the floorboards. His successors inherit the palace. And the bill, bread prices rise. Not metaphorically, literally. A bad harvest in 1788 sends grain prices climbing. By 1789, a working-class family is spending up to 80 to 90% of its income on bread. When bread becomes a luxury item, society gets unstable fast. Meanwhile, the French state is financially upside down. Decades of war, American Revolution support, Versailles-level spending habits. The treasury is empty, not tight budget, empty. Borrowing money to pay interest on borrowed money empty. France is basically refinancing its own monarchy. So Louis XVI calls the Estates General in 1789. This hasn't met since 1614, which tells you how often the monarchy enjoys group feedback. The estates are divided into three. First estate, clergy. Second estate, nobility. Third estate, everyone else. And everyone else means about 97% of the population. Lawyers, merchants, artisans, peasants, urban workers, the people paying the taxes. The third estate arrives with notebooks full of grievances. They expect reform. What they get is voting by order, meaning the clergy get one vote, the nobility get one vote, and the 97% get one vote, which feels suspiciously rigged. So the third estate does something bold. They say, essentially, we are not a voting bloc. We are the nation. They declare themselves a National Assembly. They meet in a tennis court and swear not to leave until France has a constitution. It's called the tennis court oath, which is the most dramatic thing ever sworn next to a net. Paris watches this unfold. Rumors spread that the king is moving troops toward the city. And on July 14th, 1789, a crowd marches toward the Bastille. The Bastille is a medieval fortress prison. At this point, it holds 7 prisoners. 7. But that's not the point. It represents arbitrary royal power, the ability to lock someone up without explanation. The crowd demands gunpowder. The governor hesitates. Shots are fired. Hours later, the Bastille falls. The governor's head is paraded through the streets on a pike. It's not subtle. The message is clear. Authority is now negotiable. Across France, peasants panic. Rumors of aristocratic revenge spread. They storm manor houses, burn feudal records, destroy documents that prove they owe rent and labor. If you erase the paperwork, maybe you erase the obligation. Meanwhile, in Paris, the revolution radicalizes. The king tries to leave. In 1791, Louis XVI attempts to flee to Austria. He's recognized, stopped in Varennes, brought back to Paris under guard, Trust evaporates. In 1792, the monarchy is suspended. France declares itself a republic. The king is no longer king. He's citizen Louis Capet. He's tried for treason. The vote is close. But close doesn't matter when the guillotine is involved. January 21st, 1793. Louis XVI is executed. Publicly. Clean blade. Efficient drop. The crowd watches. Some cheer. Some stare. A monarchy that traces legitimacy back centuries ends in about 10 seconds. Marie Antoinette follows months later. Same machine. Same square. The guillotine becomes industrialized politics. Fast. Predictable. Impersonal. If the old regime relied on divine right, the new regime relies on mechanical certainty. Then comes a reign of terror. Robespierre. Committees. Lists. Executions. Thousands die. Revolution begins eating its own architects. Because once you normalize removing enemies of the people, definitions get flexible. Europe watches this unfold and panics. Monarchies across the continent see a pattern. King challenged. King tried. King executed. They do not love this trend. Austria, Prussia, Britain, Spain, they form coalitions. France declares war first. Then everyone else declares war back. The revolution is no longer just internal. It becomes continental. France mobilizes mass conscription. Citizens become soldiers. The entire society reorganizes around survival. They didn't just remove a king. They remove the assumption that kings are permanent, that authority flows from God, that hierarchy is fixed. And once that idea is gone, you cannot put it neatly back. Europe is no longer arguing about borders. It's arguing about legitimacy. And France has just set the match to the entire continent. Napoleon Bonaparte. Short, strategic, ambitious. He stabilizes chaos, reforms laws, creates the Napoleonic Code, then decides Europe needs redecoration, wins repeatedly, then loses in Russia. Winter remains undefeated, eventually defeated at Waterloo, exiled, returns, defeated again, finally exiled permanently. France goes from republic to empire to monarchy to confusion in about 20 years. France can't decide what it wants. Monarchy, republic, empire, back to monarchy, back to republic. It's political musical chairs. Meanwhile, industrialization happens. Railroads, factories, urban growth. Then 1870. France loses badly to Prussia. Germany is unified. France is humiliated. Spoiler, this resentment matters later. 1914. Europe lights itself on fire. France becomes trench warfare central. Millions dead. Land destroyed. They win, technically, but exhausted. 1940. Germany invades. France falls in 6 weeks. Occupation. Resistance. Collaboration. 1944. Liberation. Then internal reckoning. France rebuilds. Post-war France builds a welfare state. Strong presidency. Nuclear power. Colonial wars in Algeria and Indochina. Protests in 1968. Student revolts. Labor strikes. France joins the European Union. Adopts the euro. Remains deeply committed to arguing in public. Today, France is nuclear-armed, politically loud, economically powerful, culturally influential, perpetually debating itself. From Celtic tribes, to Roman province, to medieval kingdom, to revolution, to empire, to republic. 5 republics, technically. Same land, different moods. France did not move in a straight line. It lurched, exploded, rebuilt, rebelled, repeated. If history had a country that refuses to sit quietly in the corner, it's France. And somehow, through invasion, plague, execution, empire, occupation, and protest, it's still there, still arguing, still influential, still very French. Subscribe, because next time we zoom in on one chapter, and France has a lot of chapters,